We talked about the English Civil War in the last unit, talking about Queen Elizabeth, right? Remember Queen Elizabeth? Her father, King Henry VIII, right, had the 6 wives. After Queen Elizabeth died, right, she is also known as the Virgin Queen because she did not remarry, she did not have children, right? So she does not have an heir, right, to take the throne, right? So with her, this dynasty, we haven't talked about this dynasty specifically here, but the Tudor dynasty is going to end with her, right? That is sort of the end of that bloodline and that family directly. The Stuart dynasty we mentioned comes to power as a result. This is basically like one of her cousins. King James II will be the first king from the Stuart dynasty that comes to power, right? They were the kings of Scotland. Unlike Elizabeth, we're going to see the Stuart family and King James first. They're going to refuse to work with Parliament, right? Parliament is that government that was set up with the Magna Carta there in England. So we're going to see a period of time here where the English king and Parliament are not getting along, they're not working together, right? They're going to have disputes over money, authority, power, religion, right? All of these major issues they're not going to come to agreements on, right? After King James dies, his son Charles will come to power, and King Charles is going to take not working with Parliament to a whole nother level. He's going to refuse to even acknowledge their existence, refuse to meet with them, right? He is going to consider himself that absolute monarch, right, with absolute power, right? He is going to rule, right, with that divine right. We talked about divine right last week, or the week before. Right? What is divine right?
Where rulers thought that they had, or that they were born, and God put them in the place to rule.
Right? That God put them in the place to rule, right? They believe that God created the monarchy system, right? They were the monarch, right? They were the king that was in place in that system God created. Therefore, they had this sort of holy right to rule, and they only had one entity or one being to answer to, and that was God, right? They did not have to do what was best for the people or what the people wanted, right? They had just to answer to God, and that was it, right? That is that divine right. We're going to see these tensions continue to grow. We're end up going to see a civil war break out. That is this English Civil War. That civil war is going to really come to an end with King Charles being beheaded. And England's going to be ruled by a military dictatorship, right, for several years after that. We're not going to go into much more detail about that specifically, but right? But this idea of government and how government should work, right? The absolute monarchs. This is going to be one of the driving factors here and one of the most important Enlightenment ideas, right, from this era, right? So we're going to see these philosophers and other people, right, challenging the rule of absolute monarchs, right? And they're also going to begin presenting new theories about government, right? New types of government, what's best, why absolute monarchs best, why a democracy's best, why a limited monarchy's best, right? They're going to begin presenting new theories kind of about human psyche and how the brain works and how people should be ruled over is what they're really going to look at. All right, so we're going to go into several different philosophers here, Thomas Hobbes being the first one. Y'all need to know what each philosopher here is famous for and right, what ideas they believe in. Okay, first one is Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes was very bothered by the English Civil War. Right? There was a lot of chaos that happened across England after the king was beheaded. Right? Imagine, one of the presidents of the United States being beheaded in a civil war. Right? Think about the chaos that would cause throughout a country. Okay, that is what happened here. Right? Their king was beheaded. There's chaos. People don't know who's in charge, what the future is going to hold. Right? Hobbes began thinking, right? He believed that humans are naturally cruel, naturally selfish, and naturally hungry for power. Any of y'all believe that humans are naturally cruel, naturally selfish, naturally hungry for power? What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody in here say no? In Hobbes' opinion, if people are naturally cruel, naturally selfish, and naturally hungry for power, right, they need to be protected from themselves. Right? If every person in this room is naturally cruel, selfish, and hungry for power, right, y'all need to be protected from yourselves. Y'all cannot rule together, right, and come up with good solutions. Everything you do is going to be to benefit yourself. Okay? So you need to be protected from yourself. With that in mind, do you think Hobbes supported a monarchy or a democracy? Think about, what is a democracy? Who's in control in a democracy? The citizens. Okay? And if all of the citizens are cruel, hungry for power, and selfish, should they be in charge? No. Okay? It's actually going to support a monarchy system. Right? Hobbes supported this idea of an absolute monarchy. Right? And using scientific reasoning, he argued that only kings with absolute power could maintain order in society. Right? Sure, this king may be, cruel, selfish, and hungry for power, right? But if he has absolute power, right, he can maintain order in society, right? Because whatever he says go is what is going to happen. And if that doesn't happen, right, there's going to be some major consequences for it, right? So the whole goal for Hobbes was to figure out how to maintain order in society best. And he believed that absolute monarchy was the best way to achieve order in society. Hobbes also believed in this idea called social contract. All right, this is an idea where people will give up power and rights to a king who provides law and order. Do y'all think that's true? Do you think people are willing to give up power and rights if law and order is being provided? No? No? If there was no crime in the United States, right, you didn't have to worry about having your stuff stolen, your house broken into, your car broken into, nobody was ever going to be attacked, there's no violent crime, no murder, no death, okay? None of that existed, but you didn't have any power, you didn't have any rights. Do you think people would want to live in that society? Perfectly safe society. There's no violent crimes, there's no crime, there's perfect law and order. But you don't have rights, you don't have power, or you don't have some of them, right?
Actually, the cycle will break and there will be just more resistance.
We'll take that out of it.
It depends on the person.
Just depends on the person, okay?
No, because I feel like people are going to get mad that they don't have rights.
Might get mad, right? There's no right. All these questions I'm fixing to ask related to the Enlightenment era, there is no correct answer, right? These are all opinionated questions, right? There are people, right? If there was no crime, right, violent or not violent, right, but no crime, right, perfect law and order, they would be willing to give up rights and power, right, to achieve safety, right? We all want safety, right? But at what price are you willing? What are you willing to give up to achieve safety, right? Hobbes believes that people are willing to give up that right and power, right, as long as there is law and order, right? That is social contract.